When our class read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein or The Modern Prometheus this past fall, I have to say I was really surprised. I was shocked at how engrossing the narrative was and how much it prompted me to think existentially. But more than that, it was jarring to see how different the source material was from where Frankenstein is in the current cultural zeitgeist. Mary Shelley wrote a beautiful and haunting tragedy about a terrible, unloving creator, his damned creation, the dangers of playing God, and abandoning your children. Today, this story reads more as this grand epic rather than anything in the realm of sci-fi. Shelley's monster is not so monstrous. Although cursed with unfortunate circumstances after unfortunate circumstances, he is a capable, coherent, academically verbose creature who is handsome despite his sunken eyes and yellow skin. Today, however, Frankenstein means something much different. He is a big, dumb green hunk. He is on Halloween decorations and in Lego sets. In the movies today, he is a thoughtless killing machine, a monster true and true. This is a pretty far stone's throw from any of Shelley's writing. So I beg the question, what happened? How did this tragedy become a cartoon? Where did all these classic tropes come from? The green skin, the spooky castle, Igor. And when did Frankenstein stop referring to the man and start referring to his creation? Despite a dense history of adaptations in the theater and on screens large and small, there is one adaptation of Frankenstein that can answer all of these questions. One movie that completely changed the game. Frankenstein, 1931. By changing the core elements of his appearance, the themes, and the atmosphere that surrounds this now classic narrative, this film was responsible for creating the modern Frankenstein, forever changing, yet immortalizing the literary classic. In the early 30s, Universal, hot off the success of Dracula, ordered for more horror films, so they purchased the rights to an unproduced American rendition of a British stage play entitled Frankenstein, An Adventure in the Macabre, and they set to work. The film was directed by James Whale and starred Boris Karloff as the monster. The film was a rousing success, and since it was made prior to the Hays Code censorship of the decade, truly pushed the envelope of cinematic horror. Because the film contained such thrilling and shocking elements, the film was preceded by this.
Mr. Carl Laemmle feels it would be a little unkind to present this picture without just a word of friendly warning. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now is your chance to, well, we've warned you.
And it faced strong backlash. It was because of the success and notoriety that many of the creative choices made here were solidified. Creative choices like the creature's appearance. One of my burning questions throughout my research was, why green? In the book, the creature is described as having yellow, almost clear skin, long black hair, white teeth, sunken eyes, and black lips. How did this, over time, become green with bolts in his neck and a big flat forehead, or really a 5-head? In some theatrical adaptations in the 1800s, the creature was everything from white to green to blue. But for cementing this specific image, we can thank Universal costume designer and legend Jack P. Pierce. He pioneered this look alongside many other Universal monsters of the time. Universal actually copyrighted this likeness, which is why other adaptations can't use this iconic look. Now you may be asking yourself, Aaron, how was he green if the film was in black and white? Well, without going down a rabbit hole of film stocks and color theory, the greenish-gray makeup that Pierce applied to make Karloff look decaying, coupled with several promotional photos in eerie lighting, gave the impression that the creature was green. And thus the green skin tone became a staple of the creature's appearance. This film didn't just pioneer the look of the creature, but it also made several other long-lasting contributions to the ethos of Frankenstein. The film's screenplay introduced Dr. Frankenstein's spooky castle, as well as his hunchbacked assistant in this movie named, weirdly enough, Fritz. But to make room for these additions, and to fit a more compelling cinematic narrative, the screenplay cut and changed a lot of what makes the text resounding and existential. The discrepancies between this screenplay and the original text are vast. The creature is given a lot less time to learn and is much more quickly provoked. Dr. Frankenstein is no more a lazy, globe-trotting jerk, instead a truly insane mad scientist. And since the screenplay does not bother with any framing devices or different perspectives, all of our characters are far less sympathetic. Gone are most of the existential themes about parenting in favor of a horror story about a man playing God. The creature is not called the creature. He is called the monster. Despite the few moments where he is sympathetic, from the outset he is meant to be a villain. The movie is also responsible for one of the more interesting tangents of Frankenstein as a character, the name swap. Enter Peggy Webling. Peggy Webling was a British playwright and the first woman to adapt Frankenstein for the stage. Like Mary Shelley, history hasn't been the kindest to her, as she was a woman attempting to make way in the world of theater, a male-dominated industry until fairly recently. Thus, her life is unfortunately poorly documented, and it has been difficult to measure to what extent she contributed to the Frankenstein we know today. Here's what I've been able to find. She wrote a draft of Frankenstein where the creature is not some larger-than-life figure, but rather an identical clone of Dr. Frankenstein himself. In the performance, the Doctor and the creature were supposed to be played by the same actor, and thus his creation was named Frankenstein. This draft went through many revisions, but it ultimately became the one that was purchased for the film rights. Additionally, when the film was released, entitled Frankenstein, and the monster didn't really have any other name, the American public slowly but surely picked up Frankenstein in their vernacular. It was cemented enough that the sequel, Bride of Frankenstein, which was only made 4 years later, does not refer to the man, but to his creation. The 1931 film is really interesting as a midpoint in the history of Frankenstein, with Mary Shelley's text being written a little over 2 centuries ago, and the film being made a little less than a century ago. Looking back 89 years, it is remarkable how much has been sustained in the image of Frankenstein. He is an instantly recognizable icon, and the imagery has made appearances in all facets of culture, from Rocky Horror to Nightmare Before Christmas to Scooby-Doo to Robert De Niro? The only notable change is the overall sanitation of something horrifying. Commercialization will always take the horror out of something scary. Look at Dracula. He's basically a central character on Sesame Street. Ultimately, the influence of Frankenstein 1931 on science fiction, horror, and on Frankenstein itself is undeniable. And as we approach another 100 years away from Shelley's text, I wonder what the next revolution in Frankenstein will be.